Thanks for coming today. My name is Kevin Haley. I work in the Symantec Endpoint Division of Broadcom. Symantec actually used to be a standalone company, got bought last November by Broadcom. I never heard of Broadcom until they bought us, but if you got an iPhone, there's 3 chips from Broadcom in that phone. Pretty much any networking equipment, whatever. Now they're in the security business as well. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. So I'm going to talk about the Brooklyn Bridge, believe it or not, but we're going to get to that a little later. What I want to start with was an article that I was reading in the New York Times about this old swindle revived. And you start reading through the article and say, hey, part of the scam is you receive letter from a foreign country. It's fairly well written, appears like, well-educated foreigner, the English is not perfect, word misspelled here or there. He has a large sum of money, the letter writer. He's willing to give 1/3 of this fortune to the person who will help him recover it. However, the man, in order to get the treasure, needs to send some money first. Anybody got any idea what this story might be about? A Nigerian prince, right? Yeah. So, actually, kind of, but it's actually about something called the Spanish prisoner. This article, last week, it's actually from 1898. All right. So, when I saw this, I got kind of interested in the history of this stuff, and I'm no historian, so, cut me a little bit of slack here, but I started to try to figure out how this Nigerian prince scandal started. And I came upon this article. I actually discovered a number of things. This threat or scam, originally called the Spanish prisoner, in 1952, the U.S. Post Office estimated about $600K was lost to this scam. Now, there were people doing this at the time who, the prisoner was not Spanish, was actually Cuban, often had a beautiful daughter who somehow worked into part of the deal. In order to make this happen, they would actually hire typists to create the letters, right? So hasn't the internet made everything better, right? You don't have to hire a bunch of typists, you just type it once. 1900s, Post Office said they stopped 1,431 of these letters. Now, in the real world back then, if their spam filtering was as good as it is now, you can imagine there were a lot of these letters that got through. They weren't catching all of them, right? All right, and then of course I found this article back in 1898, but I kept looking. I managed to find some other stuff. It wasn't in the New York Times. They didn't publish that early. In fact, the scam actually goes back to 1588. Now, the scam actually started with this guy. Anybody know who that is? I wouldn't expect you to. The English, if you were English, if you came from the UK, you might know. He's a little bit of a hero there. His name is Francis Drake, Sir Francis Drake. So, what can I tell you about Francis Drake? Well, if he had a Facebook page today, oh, and he does because I made him one, you would look something like this. So, he's got a lot of friends. You can see both myself and the Queen of England, Elizabeth II, very good friends of him. Some of his awards, Mayor of Plymouth, Member of Parliament, he was knighted. But it's really back in the personal interest where you get a sense of who this guy was. Sailing, navigating, Spanish Armada, and pirates. Now, the navigating, he actually was the second person to go around the world. So he was pretty famous for that within his time. Sailing and pirating is actually, though, really where he made his money. And in fact, at the time, he would actually get funding from his friend, the Queen, for some boats, and they would go out, and they would go into the New World, and they would, they would rob the colonies there. So they would find some town on the water, they would go in, and they'd ransack it, and they'd steal everything they could. Now, these little towns were actually owned by the Spanish, so as far as the Queen was concerned of England, they weren't getting along very well with the Spanish at the time. That was A-okay, and he was sharing loot with her, went into the treasury, everything was good. Now, if you were Spanish, though, you might have a different view of this guy, and you wouldn't think of him as a hero, but you would think of him as a pirate, right? So keep that in mind when we start getting to his big night, which is August in 1588. And that is when the Spanish Armada, which is essentially hundreds of big, huge boats, the Spanish used to control the waters, started to head England to take over, to attack, and in fact they got attacked by the English fleet at the time. So the English fleet had less boats, but they were smaller and quicker. They got some breaks from the tide. They also had some really bad management or rulers at the time in Spain who had an opportunity to attack where they probably would have won, and he said, nah, don't do it now, let's wait a couple days. And things went really bad for the Spanish here. During that battle, Sir Francis Drake managed to shoot a ship that was reputed to have a lot of money on it, gold in fact. And it went and took over that ship and looted the ship and took the gold off of that ship. So that's a story anyway. I've seen it written many times. I don't know any of my notes for sure, but the feeling is that that's what happened. And certainly at the time, that's what everybody thought happened. Sir Francis Drake is out there attacking boats, and then he sees this one that's on fire and in trouble, and he goes back and he takes all the gold off. Right? So we know he went back to that ship, whether he got gold or not, whatever, but it's common knowledge. Now the Spanish are defeated, there's a number of prisoners taken, and shortly after that, letters start going out. And the letters claim to be from a Spanish prisoner being held by the British and telling you, Francis Drake actually didn't get the gold. I was able to hide it, and then I'm in prison. But if you can help me get out of prison, I'll share that gold with you. And I just need some money to bribe the guard, and I'm out of here, right? And that's the start of the Spanish prisoner, which leads us to the Nigerian prince. Now, if there's anything beyond 1588, I can't find it. But like I said, I'm not a historian. So that leaves us here. The Nigerian prince himself, as best as I can tell, started up in about 1989. Okay, so let's go. Why Nigeria? Okay, let me say I'm not a sociologist either, but there's a couple of things that kind of make sense to me. Nigeria, you can see there's the Queen of England. I think that's the current one, when she was young. It was actually a British colony for 160 years. So for 160 years, they were a colony. I'm sure they got a very good sense of English in all that time. They probably got a pretty good idea of how to manipulate white people, right? And in the modern day, they have educated people, not a lot of work. You start looking for something to do, and this seems to be an easy way to make money. All right, so what killed the Nigerian prince scam? Why is it over? Why do we not see it anymore? You have a theory, like in here.
It's common sense.
I'm going to argue close. I think it's memes. So if you go up to Google and you type in Nigerian prince memes, this is what you're going to see. Meme after meme after meme. Okay, common sense probably makes more sense. But let's say memes. So here's tons of memes saying about the Nigerian prince. In the end of the day, people understand that that is a scam. They're aware of it, right? And they don't want to be like this, right? They don't want to be the ones like an old granny who gets fooled, right? So common sense, shame, but education. They know what it's all about. There's actually a theory that some of these scammers today purposely put a lot of spelling errors and make it look bad because they want anybody with common sense or who can easily tell this is a scam not to bother them, right? So the only people that are you can fool are the ones that reply to them. That's a theory. I don't know if it's true or not. There's another theory out there that this type of scam, which does have some scientific backing, is very attractive to narcissists. So you think about it, we all want good things to happen to us. So if a friend says he wants to give us money, that's terrific. But a narcissist thinks they deserve good things to happen to them. So it is their right. If somebody's trying to give them money, well, it's because they deserve it, right? And so they're more susceptible to this kind of thing. At the end of the day, and I'll show you some stats in a little bit, right? I think this meme says it all. I've got millions, no one ever responds. It's just not popular anymore, right? So where did it go? Well, or what happened? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to change gears just slightly right now. This is the Disney World News today. Anybody read this newspaper? You know, Disney fans out there? I don't read it either. But one of the guys I worked with sent this to me, said, you should check this out. So I have no plans to go to Disneyland anytime soon. I don't really care. I don't know why this guy is giving me this. But then I look at the headline. Walt Disney World's Reedy Creek Improvement District falls victim to a phishing scam. Okay, so now I'm interested, right? I'm going to take a look at it. Anybody know what the Reedy Creek Improvement District is? I didn't either. I had to look it up. If you put it into Google Maps, this is it. I don't know how well you can see this stuff, but it's essentially all the land that's around the Disney parks that are not part of the parks, but Disney owns. So they give it that name. And if you've ever been there, you know, it's all beautiful. It's clearly well kept up. Somebody's got to be doing the landscaping there, right? And this is the company, Brightview, that actually does the landscape for that area. So what? Well, if we go back to the article, Reedy Creek mistakenly wired $722,000 to what they believed was the Brightview landscaping company. Supposedly directed by the vendor, Brightview says, hey, we've got a new Capital One account, and I want you to send all our checks for our services there. Turns out it wasn't them, right? And it wasn't until Brightview called up and said, you guys mad at us? You're not paying us anymore? And they said, no, we're sending it to your new bank account. We don't have a new bank account, right? And they figured out what was going on. Well, that's $722,000 later. This has got the guys that did it, right? So the takeaway from here is they got caught. What's kind of interesting is where they were. These guys live in Shreveport, Louisiana. And here's the guy that caught him. It's not just happy that he arrested him, he's getting a reward here. But when I saw the quote, I thought that was terrific. When you start seeing this thing in a place called, I'm sorry, I'll start again. When you start seeing this in Shreveport, Louisiana, it's pretty widespread. So this kind of scam has become very widespread. It's called the business email compromise. There's a lot of different formats to it. It's got one of the boringest names in the world, but it's pretty serious. So here's one example of it. We've blacked out some of the protect the innocent. Looks like an email comes from the chief executive officer. It's going into the accounting department, finance, and the CEO wants to change his direct deposit. Needs to be done very quickly. I want all my salary sent to this new bank I have, right? And all of a sudden the CEO is not getting paid. The scammers are. And this has actually happened to some pretty high powerful CEOs. You think you're in the finance group and the CEO asks you to do something, you're going to jump, right? You're going to do it right away. It's the CEO who doesn't want to look good, who doesn't feel they have to respond, except it wasn't the CEO. This is the FBI crime stats for 2019. They just put these out. Let me point a couple things. Advance fee would be their name for Nigerian scam, or Nigerian prince, Spanish prisoner, or anything that says, if you pay me money up front, right, and then I'll send you more money or something of value. It's a pretty broad category. You can see it pretty low there. Way over on the other side, you see ransomware, and that is near the bottom. Anybody surprised by that? Yeah. What's happening is the ransomware that is attacking end users is going away. People aren't bothering. You guys don't have enough money. I don't have enough money to be bothered with. It's being targeted towards corporations, and they're doing a lot of things you may have seen in the paper. They'll get hundreds of machines at once. They'll encrypt all the data. They'll try to delete backups. And now we're seeing someone will say, I've got your data. I actually encrypted it, but I also took it, and I'm going to release it publicly, so now I have a breach. If you don't pay me, whatever they can to put up the pressure. But that's the growth part. It's not in ransomware that's hitting end users. Number one, right at the top. How's my math? How much money is that BTC they're saying people are losing? About $1 trillion? Is that $1 trillion? 1.7 billion? All right, it's pretty huge, right? Now, I think this is how much is attempted. I don't think this is the total losses. And we'll look at that in a minute as well. But this is the number one scam that's out there today. And where do we see this coming? This is actually a couple years old. But when we took a look at where we're seeing it, it's happening everywhere. The people behind these scams are everywhere. But there's a lot of them in Nigeria. So they moved from the prince to being the CEO. Right? I'm not sure if that's an upgrade or not, but that's what's happening. Okay. At this point, we're actually seeing a huge increase in Czechoslovakia. Don't know why. Somebody did it, was successful. A lot of people there are copying them. But again, I think the message is everywhere, but clearly Nigeria is overrepresented in this. Here's another example. This is typical of a beginning. Some are not going to do a smash and grab. They're going to try to create a relationship. They're going to try to figure out how you work. What does it take to get a PO? How do I do an international transfer? Then once I understand your policies, I can exploit you this way. That's essentially what this is. Here's a director of licensing. Hey, are you available? I need you to do something for me. I can't talk, so we'll have to do it on email, right? So very, very typical. Also in the real estate business, which we're seeing a lot of that now, because there's a lot of money being transferred in real estate, right? So very, very prevalent now. There's another thing that's kind of interesting there. You look up on the email line that I didn't blur out. Director of Real Estate, okay, kind of matches his title, but look where the email's coming from. Outlook.com. Right? I mean, that should be a giveaway right now. It's not mycompany.com. Now we're seeing typo squatters who make it look like your company.com, buy a domain. We see some that will break into your organization through a phishing attack, own an email account and do that, and so on. But you can just send it from Outlook. It's easy. In fact, when we look at the top email addresses or domains being used, Gmail, AOL.com, and Yahoo.com. They're free, right? There's no barrier to entry. You get a free account, you find somebody's address, a name up on LinkedIn, and you're ready to go. All right? The biggest surprise to me on this list, I didn't know AOL was still in business. All right? But scammers do. They love these guys, right? Free accounts. Okay. Typically, we're seeing about 6,000 organizations targeted per month. Each organization on average 5. There's a lot of this out there. Okay. What are the top 10 requests? So I'm sending that email. I'm the scammer sending the email. What am I asking for? Okay. The 10th most popular one is urgent payment needed. Hey, I'm busy. I'm in a meeting. And I'm the CEO. And this has to be done right away. Jump. Right? Send that money. Salary issues. I need my salary sent to another bank account. I need you to set up a payment for a vendor or supplier. We got this new vendor. We don't need to move quickly. We're going to move out. We're going to lose out on the deal of the century. I need you to set this up and start sending money then. Right? Always have that urgency, right? You know it's a scam. Probing for international transfer limits. How much money can you possibly send to Nigeria? Once I know, I'm going to ask for the maximum, right? All right, same-day wire payment, personal work cell phone number, right? I don't want to get caught once I have somebody on the line, don't want to talk to you on the phone, but if I do text message, then the IT guys are less, security guys are less likely to catch on than somebody from Outlook.com pretending to be the CEO, right? So, and it becomes a little more personal, or feels more personal. All right, those are the top 5, 6. There's a problem with these, though, in that if the FBI does get involved, and they don't get involved in every case, but if they do, they did about 1,000 last year, they can claw the money back. If the money goes from one bank to another, and you get there quick enough, you can get it from that bank it went to, because the bank's going to cooperate, right? And even if from there it went to another bank, you can still do it. So they got a 79% recovery rate when they get involved, they're there in time, and they can pull the money back. And you saw our friends from Shreveport, Louisiana, who got caught. Undoubtedly, that's why. Okay. So what do we got left then? The top things are actually gift cards. Amazon gift cards, App generic, and then Apple. Love those iTunes gift cards. They know how to quickly turn these into cash, and you can't trace them, right? You're not going to get caught passing them through. So typically they'll say, hey, you know what? It's the CEO. I want to reward all the hardworking people at this company. Can you go buy 20 iTunes cards, gift cards? Let's do it $100 each. They deserve it, right? So you got the CEO. You want to make them happy, and he's doing something nice for the company. It's easy to get fooled. So these are the top ones. The ones at the top are the ones that hurt the most, right? There's a lot of money there if you don't get caught. But this is where The really good scammers are doing it at this level, on those last four. Okay. Let's talk about the Brooklyn Bridge. I promised to talk about that, right? All right. Finally, we'll get to that one. Have anybody heard this expression before? If you believe that I have a bridge I'd like to sell you. This is anybody? Anyone hear that before? Okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm probably older than most people in this room, but not everybody. I remember hearing it when I was a kid. I don't know if it's popular anymore, but you know, it's like you're a fool, right? It's in the popular vernacular. It's the origin of this is from the Brooklyn Bridge. So, Brooklyn Bridge completed in 1883. Almost immediately after completion, people were trying to sell, or successfully selling it. One of the first ones, William McCloudy, or I.O.U. O'Brien, it's a great nickname, born in 1859 or 1869, it's a little shady there. He was convicted in 1901 for selling the Brooklyn Bridge. All right, there you can see the newspaper article on that, got a life sentence. He also was forgery impersonating an officer in Grand Larceny. So it wasn't just a bridge. He was a multi-talented individual. Now, this guy actually has his own Wikipedia page, so he's pretty famous, I guess. It's actually not for selling the Brooklyn Bridge, it's actually for the gold brick swindle. Anybody know that one? Right? So you got a gold brick. I'm gonna take my little case, pretend this is a lead bar. So I'll paint that a number of times to make it look like a gold bar. About the same weight, I got it the same size. I've got a problem with my family, I got family issues, I need money. I could get a lot of money for this, but I just took gold. Well, this is what Reed figured out. He'd make a little divot on the bottom of that gold bar. He said, "You don't believe me?" He'd take out his knife and he'd pry out that little chunk that was actually real gold. He'd hand it to the mark, say, "Go ahead, have somebody test it." They'd go test it, it was real gold, they come back and they buy the whole bar, right? Got a bunch of that. Pretty smart. Also, I believe he ran, or they know he ran, they're not sure whether he invented or not, the green goods scam, which is the same kind of thing, only it's with money. So pretend to have a bag full of counterfeit money. You don't think that, you don't think this money is believable? You don't think it could fool anybody? Well, here, I'll pull out 20 and I'll go into a bank and I'll cash it. I'll use it in a store, right? And so people would say, if you can use this money there, this is really impressive counterfeit money. Well, it wasn't impressive counterfeit, it was actually real money. But he's fooled the person into thinking it's great counterfeit money. The person buys it from him before or during the purchase, they switch the bag. So he just gets a paper full of green, or a bag full of green paper. He never gets a bag of real money. So that's a scam there. He and a buddy of his actually went to Europe, started working it. They had some sort of disagreement, and his buddy shot him. So he didn't live past 34. Crime doesn't pay, I guess. 34 years old. I love it. It's not resting in peace. He's just at rest. So he was also sold the Brooklyn Bridge. And so that's why he's in this presentation. Here's my favorite. This is George Barker. As a young man, 1861, 1937. Here he is as an old man right before he went to prison at 68. Lived another 15 years in prison. Went to Sing Sing for selling the Brooklyn Bridge, which he claims to have done over for more than 20 years, 2 to 3 times a week. He also sold the original Madison Square Garden, the Museum of Art, ROCA, and the Statue of Liberty. He spread himself out, right? Because we're a real estate man. So, kind of raises the question, who would be stupid enough to buy the Brooklyn Bridge, right? Okay, here's who would be stupid enough. Immigrants coming in from Ellis Island. Actually, I don't think they were stupid. And there was a good reason why they were terrific victims for this. So let me explain why I think this is the case. First of all, these are people coming from a new island, or coming to a new land, they're landing on this island, and the Brooklyn Bridge was actually considered an engineering marvel and was known around the world. And so when they landed in this strange country, they knew the Statue of Liberty and they knew the Brooklyn Bridge. So 2 things they knew. Now, I believe this is not to scale, but it gives you a sense of how important it was at the time that this was drawn, right? Everybody knew about this structure. All right. Coming from other countries, these countries had this concept of toll roads and bridges and ferries that you had to pay to get across. So they were buying it as a business proposition. They would make their money back by charging people to get across the bridge. And in fact, most of the people that got fooled did not realize they were fooled until they got to the bridge and they put up barriers to stop people and ask for their money. And the people would be like, are you crazy? And then the police would come and chase them off the bridge, and then they'd figure out they got scammed. All right, now, knowing you have really perfect victims coming off of Ellis Island, the scammers would send what they call ropers actually down to the boats to meet people, right? And if you think about immigrants coming to this country, they're going to have a hard time getting a job, right? And we see a lot of immigrants who come here, even today, start their own businesses because that's easier than getting their own job and it gives them a sense of self-worth, whatever. And if you have some money to do it, you're willing to invest in something and have your own business. So in that way, they were really they're not stupid, they're just really a perfect victim to fall for this type of scam. So how did they stop this without memes? Well, they actually did something very simple. Oh, I forgot, one last point. So the other thing about this is, you think about how big the Brooklyn Bridge is, they would bring these people to the bridge and they'd have a for sale sign. Now say the cops, right? You just post it right up there, right? Now say the cops are coming by, well, you just take your sign down and you just walk to another part of the bridge and put it back up, and that's where you bring them. You could move it endlessly because that bridge is so huge and you could avoid the authorities, but bring your victims right to that spot with the sign. Okay, so how they stop this without names is actually very, very simple. When people came to this country, I'm forgetting myself again. So this is like one of the first cultural references I could find, a Frank Sinatra song. So maybe people learn common sense, they learn that the Brooklyn Bridge, you can't sell it, right? There's actually a movie from 1936 with Mae West called Every Day a Holiday. She's called Peaches O'Day in the movie, and she has to leave town because she sold the Brooklyn Bridge to somebody. So popular culture, common knowledge, at least 1936. I saw this movie when it first came out. Okay, no, I'm not that old. But none of those things are really what stopped it. It was this. They gave people who were coming into this country pamphlets that explained that you couldn't buy public infrastructure. You couldn't buy the Brooklyn Bridge. And they posted signs up near the boats saying, somebody may approach you to try to sell you something, don't believe them, they're scammers, right? And it just went away. And we stopped seeing this problem. I've always thought, wouldn't that be great if we could do this to everybody getting on the internet, right? Make them read the pamphlet so they know they wouldn't do a lot of stupid stuff. I don't think that's going to happen, right? There's too many out there, and there's no way we can stop people. And that's fine. But let me draw my conclusion from all this. I've been doing this a long time, more than 20 years, and I'll get people all the time, people fall for phishing attacks. And you talk to the IT folks there, the security people, they'll tell you, our employees are just hopeless, right? Or there's no point even trying to train these people. They're so stupid, right? Our end users suck, right? I think that's a really bad attitude. Now, I get it, right? And you all have probably helped a friend or a relative with something, and you probably felt the same way. And I get it, I felt that way as well, but you can't let that overcome you. And you really have to do your part to help people. Because the argument I want to make is, we know that nothing is 100% secure, right? We've come to that realization, nothing's 100% secure. So why are we expecting end users to never get fooled? Right? Why do we expect them to be perfect? They're not going to be, right? So first accept that, have a little patience with them. And yes, some security training will only work with some people some of the time. But the other thing we talk about is risk reduction. And isn't that what risk reduction is all about? Maybe if that person just once doesn't click on the link, or twice doesn't get fooled, you've reduced the risk to your organization, in your family. I think it's worth the time. So I'll finish by saying, when you hear people saying, these people will never get it, they're untrainable, there's nothing we can do to fix this, I would say, hey, if you believe that, I have a bridge I'd like to say. So that's my main point, as well as talking about the BEC stuff. And whatever time we have left, I'd be happy to answer any questions about this stuff or anything that's going on in the threat landscape or security I can answer for you. Yes?
What's the story behind the guy who sold the Eiffel Tower twice?
I'm sorry, what's the story about?
What's the story behind the guy who sold the Eiffel Tower twice?
The guy that sold the Eiffel Tower twice. I don't know that guy. I kept to our country. I didn't go into France. They got enough problems over there.
I'm in a different country.
You're in France? So, I mean, typically we know this one guy sold it 2 to 3 times a week. There's nothing, since you don't own it, there's nothing to prevent you. Typically these guys, once you bought something, we talk about Madison Square Garden and the Statue of Liberty. Grant's Tomb was very popular to sell as well. It always would come with a lot of paperwork as well. I mean, they would make up fake paperwork so you feel comfortable. Hand over the money, everybody signs the contract, you got all the ownership proof. Of course, it's never true. Is this some guy that did it recently?
No, this is, I think around the same time. I don't remember the detail, I just remember reading an article that some guy who scammed
Right.
2 people. I guess
Yeah,
twice.
I'm sure more than that. And I think it's a sign, anything that's a good idea, well, as far as criminals think is a good idea, is going to spread. Right? Our friends in Shreveport, Louisiana, did not dream up business email compromise by themselves. Somebody told them how to do it and that it would work, and so they got themselves an Outlook.com account and did it. And it worked. So they got caught, right, as these things normally do. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all coming today and hearing about the Brooklyn Bridge. Thanks.